To people who have come to the US, what's something that Americans do that we don't even notice? Story 1. TV commercials saying, "Buy our product X, it's better than product Y made by another company." In the UK, competitors' products are never named in the commercial. The closest you get is compared to the leading brand. Also saying, "What?" when you don't hear someone properly. That's considered pretty rude in the UK. We just say, "Pardon?" or "Sorry" instead. Not sure what we're apologizing for though. Think we just like being self-deprecating. Also, your petrol is so cheap. Currently £1.30-ish per liter in the UK. Story 2. The girl I'm dating always cracks up at how I, American, count starting with my index finger instead of my thumb. At work, they think it's funny that I have old-fashioned brown leather steel-toed boots instead of the modern, sneaker-looking safety shoes. Story 3. Replying to thank you with yep or something similar. I know it's cultural and not intentionally rude, but damn if it doesn't jar me every time. Meanwhile, a fellow Canadian responding to a thank you that way is passive-aggressive as f***. Story 4. Hey, how are you? Well, I'm not so good today. Woke up with a headache and I didn't even drink. Had a good sleep, I guess, but a bit too long. My dog is getting older and I can see the end of her life is coming near. And tomorrow I'll have to go to the dentist and… what? I mean, I'm fine. How are you? The "how are you" thing is not a question. It's like saying hi. Story 5. Londoner who moved to LA 4 years ago. 2 things. The strangely large gap between the door and the hinge in the toilet, bathroom, cubicles. Why? And superfluous additions to words such as tuna fish and horseback riding. Story 6. I thought it was just a stereotype that American high school girls said like for every 3 to 4 words, but some of them really did. It was like they just couldn't help themselves, like it's like they're Tourette's or something, like they just have to say it. Also, shoes inside and carpet floor in the kitchen and bathroom and plastic siding on houses. Weird. Story 7. We talk loud as f***. I was in France for several months and it was like everyone was whispering. After 3 months, my family visited and I was thoroughly embarrassed by how loudly they spoke. 2 weeks back in the US and I was back to full volume. Story 8. When Americans say, "I'm German," what they mean is that their ancestors immigrated from Germany a while back. The same goes for any other nationality. Unless you have an accent, the assumption is that you're referring to your ethnic group, not your nationality. Story 9. Serve the most amazingly massive portions of food I've ever seen. I ordered one meal in Oregon, and the lady who owned the place looked me up and down and said, "You sure about that, little fella?" I'm 6 feet and around 190 pounds. The meal came on 2 plates and I didn't eat again until the next day. But I finished every bite. Story 10. When I was in Florida, everyone thought I came from Australia. My accent is Mancunian, as in Manchester, England, specifically northern Manchester. Side note, there's also an accent and dialect change every 10 miles in the UK, so I can imagine you guys don't recognize most Brits by their voices. Story 11. I noticed this only among white Americans, but there's this nervous need to prove to me that they're not racist. So they just feel the need to tell me how great my English is. It's my first language. How amazing, insert East Asian country that may or may not have any relation to where I'm from's culture is. How much they love, insert East Asian country that may or may not have any relation to where I'm from food, or how beautiful and exotic my eyes are. Unfortunately, sometimes it comes off as racist, but I try not to get offended since they usually mean well. Story 12. Sitting at a bar and being in the way of people trying to order drinks. It's uncustomary to have everyone sit along the bar in any pub, bar, or boozer, or alcohol establishment, you get the gist, in the UK. The bar is where people go to order drinks and then walk away from, not somewhere to sit. I was in Chicago 2 years ago. In the first few bars we went into, we had to order drinks from a passing waitress as we couldn't get close to the bar due to everyone sitting all the way along it. Just not a done thing anywhere else I've been to in America. Story 13. Gush over my broad Australian accent. "G'day, mate. Nah, I don't ride a kangaroo to work, mate, but thanks for asking." Totally harmless and funny, I get it, but it does get a bit old after a few days. Story 14. Talk to strangers or acquaintances. In the UK, you don't even talk to people who go to your school or work unless you really like them when you see them in the street. This rule generally applies the further south you go. Though I am personally from a place in the north of England, and the antisocial way is slowly creeping upwards, we used to be really chatty where I am, according to my parents. Story 15. I don't know if this is something Americans notice, nevertheless I was amazed by it. I went on a 3-week holiday to Hawaii. On our flight back home, we flew from Honolulu to Los Angeles to Miami. At each airport, we would spend at least 4 hours. Every airport had its own culture, people, and languages. I flew almost 7,900 kilometers, yet I was still in the same country. But it didn't feel like it at all. Story 16. You all walk to your right on the sidewalk. If I try to walk to my left, you stand there and say, "Excuse me." In the UK, people weave in and out of each other by reading body language. So it was a shock because no one told me Americans would all unanimously do this. Story 17. You all drive absolutely gigantic cars, honestly. They're absolutely gargantuan. In England, I see at least 80% of the cars are small Fiesta-style hatchbacks. In the US, everyone just drove huge f***off trucks. It seemed strange. Edit. A lot of people are saying everyone else has a truck and they wouldn't feel safe driving a hatchback amongst so many trucks. This is similar to the gun argument I hear sometimes. Just an observation. Story 18. Southern Americans seem to have the propensity to be extremely hospitable and complacent. It was a welcome reprieve from the European hostility for a traveling Romani family. It was quite pervasive and consistent as we traveled across towns. You're a lot more tolerant than international media purports. I actually don't like the allusion to unrepentant racism that every media outlet perpetuates because it diminishes progress. Although my experience doesn't negate other people's oppression from a Roma perspective, it was spectacular. No raucous cheering of agreement when a pejorative is shouted. In fact, it was the first time I've gone without Gypsy tenaciously following us. No repulsion was visible in people's countenances, no palpable animosity, and no provocations of violence. Whatever they say about American racism, you did receive the memo about rectifying the Roma exemption that Europe threw out the window. Story 19. Gush over accents. From my own experience, the "say something British" was weird when I was over there, but my wife went with her family when she was about 7 or 8, and as soon as she opened her mouth, she would have people clustering around her as they couldn't believe the accent, Middle England, coming out of an extremely blonde, small girl's mouth. At one point in a restaurant, the waiter had to go away and compose himself as he couldn't stop laughing when she ordered her food. He did apologize when he returned. Story 20. When I've stayed in any hotel in the US, if I pass someone in the corridor, they say hello or good morning, etc. No one would do that here in the UK. Not if you're lucky, perhaps. Also, people talk to each other on trains. In the US, I've had people strike up friendly conversations with me. That would just never happen here, and if it did, the other person would probably get so uncomfortable they'd switch carriages. Also, calling someone sir just as a matter of course in regular conversation, like a kid to an adult man, for instance. Saying thank you for your service to soldiers when you see them. I've never seen that anywhere else, and here it would sound really contrived. Talking in the cinema and interacting with a film, odd. So many ad breaks. Story 21. Free refills. I felt like I was stealing. Ads on TV for a prescription drug. The number of ads in general. People thinking I'm from Texas when I say I'm from the Netherlands, Europe, and how little weird people there actually are compared to what the news shows us here, like Florida Man and such. Oh, and I almost forgot the biggest and most stupid thing. Catcalling. Seriously, I couldn't go a single day without being catcalled at least 4 times with the record standing at 12 in just one day. Plus, in the LA subway, they literally announce over the intercom that sexual harassment is also a crime. What the f***? Story 22. Some Americans love to drive in the left lane and won't move when there's a car behind them. When I drive almost everywhere in the world, unless there's some heavy traffic, people stick to the right lane, or left if you drive in the UK, Japan, Australia, etc., and use the left lanes to pass. That allows people who want to drive faster to do so. If someone forgets to move back from the left lane and you find yourself behind them, you simply flash your high beams and they move back to the right lane, allowing you to pass. It doesn't work quite the same way in America. Here, people usually pick whatever lane they feel like and stay there, even if their speed is exactly the same as the car next to them. If you get stuck behind cars like that, you want to pass, good luck to you. If you flash your high beams, the blocking driver will probably get offended that you're trying to move them out of their lane and won't let you pass, even if they're on their phone and they notice you. Story 23. So, I'm American, but my partner is British. He finds it very odd that people will have food delivered to them at work or at a hotel, and that it's possible in many major cities nowadays to get food other than like pizza or Chinese delivered. According to him, that's not really done in England. Story 24. Drive everywhere. I was staying with a friend who lived about half a mile from a small town. I got up early one morning and walked into town to get some shopping. When I got back, she couldn't understand how I'd made it there. I don't drive, and back on my own steam, it took me like 10 minutes each way. I walked that far to my nearest bus stop for work. Story 25. Why is your money all the same color? Every time I went shopping, I held up the lines because it took me a lot of time to scramble through my wallet to find the correct banknotes because everything is the same color. Story 26. My friends from Italy came to visit and were confused that people will wave to a car that stops to let them cross the street, or will wave to other drivers as a kind of thanks on the road from time to time. It's such a small gesture, but they were both impressed and confused.